gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Piece of heaven with our new exit on 287. We can be seen on channel 20. That's our TV. Oaklander, gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Love it. Catch our fall season.
Good evening and welcome to the Oaklander. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo. The month of May brings us to the traditional start of the summer with the Memorial Day weekend. For those who march in parades and the ceremonies that follow to commemorate those who did not return, we mark this time for the men and women whose spirit, pride, and sacrifice for their country shall not be forgotten. Our guest this evening is Major William Coote, U.S. Air Force retired. Bill's career in the Air Force has spanned as a flight instructor to a test pilot and far beyond. Bill is also a member of the Red River Valley Pilots Association, formed by pilots that flew over Southeast Asia. Thanks for being our guest on the Oaklander tonight, Bill.
Well, my pleasure to be here, Al.
Bill, why did you select the Air Force? I'm sure there's a tale to be told there. Can you tell us how you got your career started?
Back in the middle 50s, just after I graduated from high school, a friend of mine wanted to join the Navy. Well, the recruiting office was about 50 miles away, so I told him I would join him on his trip to the recruiting office.
And this was where?
Well, this is in central New York, a town called Utica.
Okay.
When we got to the recruiting office, of course we hitchhiked there, we didn't have cars in those days. We were going down the 4th floor corridor. He was going towards the Navy recruiting office, and as we passed the Air Force recruiting office, I looked in and there was my uncle sitting behind the desk as a recruiter. So he motioned me in, and Bob went on to the Navy office, and we got to talking, and he asked me what I was going to do after I graduated from the high school and college. I said I had no idea. He said, well, have you ever thought about flying? No. Then he said, would you like to? And I said, sure, I wouldn't mind doing something like that.
Who wouldn't, right?
Exactly. So he asked me to fill out some papers, which I did. He then said there would be an examination scheduled by the Air Force at some time in the future. Well, it wasn't until the next summer when I got my assignment to go to Sampson Air Force Base up in Geneva, New York, to go through the testing. There was some 5,000 people at Geneva going through this testing in a couple of weeks period of time. Even though I spent just 1 week there, it was kind of a cyclic situation where they'd come in 500 at a time. I was one of approximately 500 that were selected out of 5,000 to become a entry-level person, like a cadet, into the Air Force, going through flying school.
I guess they scrutinize quite heavily on...
Well, the ground tests at that point were about 3 days of testing, written tests. And there was also some dexterity tests. There was a physical, which took 2 days to perform. And basically it was about a 6-day overall testing period. So I felt very fortunate in getting into that, and it really keyed me up for going in later.
How long ago was that, just to put it in a perspective of time?
Right, that was 1954.
Okay. I don't think I was born yet at that point.
Really?
As a test pilot in the late 50s, you had a chance to work with people like Chuck Yeager, and later flew the F-105s over Southeast Asia.
Right.
Can you tell us about some of the different aircraft that you flew and how you instructed some of the younger pilots?
Correct. When I first graduated as a second lieutenant rated pilot, I went into the F-84 aircraft, which was a fighter bomber aircraft, and that was in Niagara Falls, New York. I spent approximately a year there, and then went down to Youngstown, Ohio, and flew the F-86 aircraft. And from that point, about 6 months later, I went into the Air Training Command and started flying as an instructor. Of course, I did go through instructor school to learn how to teach. And I would say from 57, end of 57 on through to the end of 1960, I spent in Big Spring, Texas as an instructor in the T-33 airplane. From that point, I went on overseas to Italy.
And you were an instructor overseas in Italy also?
No, I was actually affiliated with Combat Command Post. I was responsible for seeing to it that fighter pilots got alerted correctly and went to their targets on time. So I was in what was called a command post.
Now, this is the early 60s. We're talking
Yes.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
We're talking about looking towards the Soviet frontier there. So that must have been a kind of a hair-raising experience back in those days.
Yes, and one of the specific incidents I remember vividly was I was flying alone out over the Mediterranean in the T-33 as a target ship for some interceptors, friendly interceptors that were practicing at night. And it's about midnight, and I get this call over the radio near Milano. They were saying, land immediately. And they gave my tail number, land immediately. Land immediately, and they repeated it several times. So I said, what is the problem? And they didn't give me an answer. They said, we'll tell you when you get on the ground. So I landed at the Air Force Base at Naples, and they told me that President Kennedy had been assassinated, and that all aircraft were being called down from the air to land immediately. So I stayed at Naples for about 3 days waiting for the initial reaction to clear, and then I went back to my home base in Aviano.
Boy, that must have been one shock created by another shock.
Very much so.
The area over Vietnam that you saw most of your action was an area called Pac 6. What was significant about this particular area?
At the time I was there, Pac 4, Pac 5, and Pac 6 were heavily armed bastions, probably the most heavily armed area anywhere in the world during a wartime situation.
For the edification of our viewers, Pac 3, 4, what does Pac represent?
Okay, the package numbers, and they were packages, they were numbered by the Pentagon into areas where initially the Navy was responsible for Route Pac 6, the Air Force initially responsible for Route Pac 5, Route Pac 4. They shortened the terminology into Pac 5, Pac 6, etc. And they also intermixed the Navy and the Air Force because of the specific mission types. They intermingled their missions, so to speak, because it was very dangerous in those specific areas around Hanoi and around Kep airfields. It was very bad.
This was the most dangerous pack of all the
Yes.
packs north of South Vietnam.
Yes, the Navy was coming off the water, the carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin, and we were coming from Thailand over to the North Vietnam area. We were also coming out of, some of the aircraft were coming out of South Vietnam, flying north over the water near the area where the Navy was ingressing into North Vietnam.
What did you experience on these flights into Pac 6? And I understand that you had to refuel in midair to have enough fuel to get you to your targets and then back.
May I describe a typical mission?
Surely.
We would take off initially about 4:30 a.m. Join up with a tanker up near Laos. That would be approximately half an hour into the mission. There'd be a flight of 16 airplanes. We did that in all kinds of weather. And when we got onto the tanker, we stayed with them until we got almost to the North Vietnamese border. From that point, the tanker would drop us off. We would rejoin in our formations and head along our route into the North Vietnamese area. We would turn south, and we would be at this time period approximately 14 to 15,000 feet above the terrain. We would then head south into the Hanoi area, where initially the flak would come up at us. We would evade the flak by changing altitude. When we changed altitude, the flak would cease, and we knew right away the MiGs were going to come in after us.
Didn't want to shoot any of their own aircraft down.
Correct. So the MiGs would start after us, but by that time we were pretty close to our destination, and we would simply roll in, down the chute, hit our target, and off and home as fast as we could, afterburner screaming.
Well, that's, and would you have to refuel on the way back?
After we came off the target, we would, by radio, join each other's flights as we had come in, the same leader. His wingmen would join on him, and we would egress out of the country, and after we exited North Vietnamese territory, we would then go into a tanker join-up mode. We might not all be together because many missions, there were many guys shot down. So a lot of times you had guys other than your own flight joining yours, looking for a tanker. We would spend approximately a half an hour to 45 minutes in the target area, that is in the North Vietnamese area, and then we would egress out.
The mileage from, there was a DMZ, a demilitarized zone between the two countries.
Yes.
If you were to fly from the DMZ into Pac 6, how many miles did that encompass?
Approximately 250.
250 miles? And
Right.
So how much fuel are you burning in only 250 miles?
A lot.
Really?
Well, if we were back to normal throttle range without a bomb load, we wouldn't burn a lot of fuel, but still, our airplanes were big and they were heavy.
And they were called thuds, right?
They were called the F-105 Thud, yes.
Thunderbolts.
Exactly. Yes. If we had a bomb load on, and if we were going in afterburner, we were burning fuel very rapidly. The fuel in that case would last approximately 20 minutes, and then we would have to get another tanker.
Wow. Bill, we must take a break for a moment, and please stay with us as we continue our conversation with retired Air Force Major Bill Coote.
Marble Falls
Only you.
can prevent forest fire. And it's true. We know we can count on you to do what Rocky says.
Drown your campfires with water. Make sure it's totally wet. Then stir and drown again.
We know we can count on you to do what Rocky says.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Welcome back to the program. We're here with Bill Coote. We have a photo of you here receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross. Could you tell us on how you earned this medal, Bill?
One of my missions over North Vietnam, when the F-4 aircraft could not hit their target properly, we were asked to go in and extinguish the target. Happened to be a 100-millimeter cannon that were shooting at pilots going across the border. So they asked our flight, and by this time we were down to just 2 airplanes. Dallas flight, Bill Erickson and myself went across the border, and we laid down on our initial pass some CBUs called the little bomblets that go off when you drop a big canister. There's a lot of little bomblets inside.
That little nasty word, cluster bombs?
Cluster bombs. These went down and they took the people out of the area. They went back in their caves so that they wouldn't get bombed by these little bomblets anymore. And then we made another pass and came down and hit the gun and took it out of action. This act was written up by another pilot who witnessed the event, took it back to headquarters, wrote it up as a distinguished mission, and therefore we got the Distinguished Flying Cross from
And
it.
all of these missions are photographed with special cameras that
Yes.
are on the aircraft,
Yes.
so you can verify
Yes.
target misses or target hits, or
Yes.
how a certain comrade had gone down or something like that.
Exactly.
It's it really is something when you kind of regress. Even myself, thinking about some of these events of say 30 years ago. Now, you're involved with the Red River Valley Fighter Pilots Association.
Yes.
That's a real mouthful there.
River rats, call it
River Rats. Okay. This is a special group of individuals, and what is the purpose of the group here?
Well, the present purpose is to see that the kin folks of those that are killed in action or still missing in action in some cases are taken care of with scholarships to colleges of their choice. So we are in a process of donating approximately $100,000 a year, just us, into the fund for their scholarships as they go to throughout their life. They choose the college, we provide the funds. Now, it was originally formed as a fighter pilots organization to talk over tactics, and it evolved into taking care of the kin of those that were harmed after the war.
Talking over tactics, you mean scrutinizing present policy on how
Exactly.
operations are
Exactly.
done now?
Exactly.
Did it kind of move away from that aspect as being kind of political, or just it was more important? to
Definitely
settle-
we weren't political, and our actions in forming this group, several of the wing commanders got together at a specific base, and they would speak tactics in how to save lives as they went about their daily missions. So they formed this monthly meeting, and it stayed in effect until after the war was over. And this meeting did save lives by improving the tactics that we used in our bombing sorties.
How many pilots did we lose, Bill?
I'm not sure. I have no idea about that.
The River Rats is also dedicated to the idea that we should never commit our armed forces to a conflict that we don't intend to win. Have they had any influence in recent conflicts such as Somalia or Bosnia?
The Air Force?
Yes. The River Rats.
The River Rats are not involved in that at all. They aren't. But they were involved with Desert Storm. After the Desert Storm event was completed, those pilots in that theater joined our group, and they also became River Rats. Those that were harmed, their next of kin are being taken care of now by us
Okay.
through the scholarship program. Yeah.
And do you have fundraisers, or it's just private donations? How does that work?
Every year we have a meeting. It's approximate 4 days in length, and all of the River Rats that can, they get together, and we call it a reunion, River Rat reunion.
Okay.
They get together, and during this reunion, they take collections. And that's where they get their bulk of their funds. However, throughout the year, they run promotions. A lot of River Rats are airline pilots, and they're affiliated with Delta, Continental, American Airlines, TWA, you know, the regular airlines. They produce fundraisers and get some funds through this.
Corporate sponsors?
Corporate sponsors, sure. Sure.
I guess they'll be, most of the airline pilots are groomed in the Air Force.
Exactly.
I guess it's a good, good place to learn how to fly.
That is correct. Yeah.
What about your family life? How did they adjust by moving from around the world? And
Yes, they had to adjust. They were forced into it. My wife Ellie, she agreed to go with me because of the love we had for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Go with me through thick and thin as we moved around, and she was briefed by me on what Air Force life was really like. And it turned out exactly like I told her. A move every 2 to 3 years, packing, unpacking, and that sort of thing. New schools for the kids as they grew up and got older, and
How many
it
kids
was
do you
kind of
have?
rough. I have 2 girls. But their greatest awakening, I guess you would say, would be when they went to Okinawa with me. That's one of the Japanese islands.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hot, very humid, and they did not like the weather. They liked the people, but they didn't like the weather at all. And it was a strange place, but they did grow. The kids didn't mind it, but my wife didn't like it.
Oh, well. Well, Bill, thank you for sharing your career in the United States Air Force with our Oaklander audience. If the viewers would like more information on the Scholarship Fund, where should they direct their inquiries?
Well, they can write to me at my address, and that's at 25 Arrowhead Road, Oakland, New Jersey, 07436.
And you can pass along information.
Absolutely. I'll
Regarding.
give them information in regards to how they can become a sponsor for someone going to college.
Bill, thank you for being our guest on our
Pleasure.
show.
Pleasure, Al.
And we'll be back after these messages.
There's an awesome power that can eliminate over half of our nation's defense forces. It's everywhere, and it can strike at any time. Who has this incredible power? You do. If you employ National Guard and Reserve members, you need to use your power wisely, because today, the Guard and Reserve make up over half of our country's defense. So when they need time off to serve, be a hero. Give them the freedom to protect ours.
Welcome back to the program. With us now is Janet Pfeiffer. Jan is an author of children's books. You may have seen her on News Talk Television, Real Personal, and Ask E. Jean. Janet's latest book, The Seedling's Journey, delivers powerful messages that emphasize positive conflict resolution through reasoning. Jan, thank you for being our guest on the Oaklander tonight.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Al.
Could you tell us about your experience in a creative writing workshop that you had taken and the piece that you wrote and how your work was received?
Well, it was quite a few years ago. I attended a writer's workshop in Englewood, and we were each asked to bring something that we had written and to read it to the other people that were there, and then we would critique each other's work. And I had written this story, never seriously thinking about getting it published, and there was a gentleman there by the name of Bill Carr. He was a writer for the Jackie Gleason show, as well as some other well-known Hollywood personalities. And when I was done reading it, he came up to me and he said, "Don't change a single word of that story." He said, "Someone's going to publish it." And that was all he said to me, and I never saw him again. And it just, those words just kind of stuck in my head. And then several years later, I had just gotten the feeling that, well, maybe this was something that I should pursue. But it was really his words that had encouraged me to go ahead and actually get it published. And that started my whole career in writing.
Well, it really is encouraging to have someone from the business give you such an accolade.
Yes.
You had been going through a personal tragedy at this time with a friend. How helpful were some of these skills that you use in managing the situation?
Well, a friend of mine was going through a very difficult divorce, and he was very bitter, really feeling sorry for himself and having a hard time accepting the fact that his wife had left him. And I wrote the story down for him, and I gave him a copy, and I said, you know, instead of feeling sorry for yourself, I said, you've got a lot of things going for you. You're a good-looking fellow, you've got a great personality. He was still young at the time. I don't even think he was out of his 20s. And I said, you really need to stop feeling sorry for yourself and focus on everything that is good in your life and rebuild your life based on that. So I gave him a copy of the story, and he read it, and he told me that it just had helped him tremendously. It enabled him to change his whole attitude throughout his divorce. And then he was the one who said, did you ever think about getting this published? And I said, well, you know, kind of on and off, but my life was really very busy raising children at the time. And again, his words stuck in my ear, so that there were just these little nagging voices that kept saying, you know, maybe you ought to think about this seriously. And so eventually I did.
Well, tell us about the Seedlings journey. What does it entail?
Well, actually, it's a story about 16 or 17 years ago. I had gone hiking, and I was standing on top of a mountain on this huge rock, and there was a crevice in the rock, and this huge tree had grown out of this crevice. And I was just instantly inspired that, you know, nothing can grow inside of a crevice. There's no soil, there's no light, there's no warmth, and yet somehow this little seedling found itself inside the crevice of a rock, and rather than complain over where he ended up and be envious of others, he just decided, well, here I am, I might as well grow and do the best I can. And that's basically how I wrote the story. It was written in my head years and years ago. But it's an attitude that I've taken with me through life, that we really have very little control over what goes on around us. But what we do have control over is how we handle it and how we let it affect us. So that no matter where we end up in life, we can always find some good in it. We can always grow where we're planted. And that's the message of the Seedlings journey.
Sounds very interesting. So you tie this in with young children who may be going through a difficult time or facing some problems in their lives, especially in today's set of circumstances.
Yes.
But what do you see are some of the common problems that face young children today that could benefit from this reading?
Well, I think children today face a whole set of problems that are unique to them right now. With the whole family splitting up, families are not together anymore, so children are separated from one parent. They no longer live together as a family. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of heartbreak for these children. Many of them are left alone because the custodial parent then has to go out to work. Even in families that are still together, many times both parents work and the children are left alone a lot. So they don't have that sense of security that, you know, children maybe in our generation had where the families were together. They're faced with problems such as drugs and alcohol in the schools, and I mean tremendous amount of violence. Kids go to school today and they don't even feel safe going to school because they're faced with weapons, you know, that other children bring to school.
Well, here again, I mean, you really veered me off on that. I mean, we pay an adequate amount of money to keep our children safe. I am really surprised that people in our town, in our state, in our country have not really gotten onto the Teachers Association and say that we will not stand for this.
Right.
And that's something that can be stopped. I don't think a child has to put up with that in school.
No, they don't.
How do you feel about that?
Well, there's no reason why they should have to. Our children should be safe. And what's happening is these children are coming to school very angry for whatever reasons, whatever's going on in their life, in their home situation or whatever. They're coming to school with all this anger. Some of the children that are bringing weapons are then expressing their anger by using these weapons, and the children that don't have them are afraid, so that this fear is creating feelings of anger within them. There are districts within the state that are doing something about it. There's a fellow named Sam Hull that I met down in Bridgeton, New Jersey, and he has instituted a zero tolerance policy in his entire school district because the violence was so out of control. And if I'm not mistaken, within the 3-year period that program has been in existence, violence within the school district has dropped 92%. So they are instituting a policy where they do not tolerate any type of aggressive behavior whatsoever.
Okay. Well, your themes seem to be based on realities of life.
Yes.
And say children who go through the pain of divorce or the loss of a sibling or that awkward period of adolescence that everybody just tries to get through as best they can. How do the children pick up on the feeling of being that little seedling? What do they grasp a hold on in your books that kind of gives them the will to resist weapons, to keep their head above water?
Well, what I try to get through to children as well as to adults is that we are in control of our own lives. We are responsible for our own happiness, our own unhappiness, our own success, our own failures. So that no matter what is happening in our lives, even though we may not be able to control the circumstances, we can control how we let it affect us. We can always find something good and build on that. When you give children the feeling that they have some sense of control in their lives, it eliminates a great deal of frustration and anger for them. I also try to teach them skills on how to deal with their anger and how to express it effectively so that it's not coming out in a destructive fashion.
Just quickly, before we go to a break, what would one of those skills be like? I'm very curious.
Okay. For children or adults that have a tendency to explode with their anger through yelling or screaming or hitting someone, I always tell them that when you feel that anger start to well up inside of you, you do 3 things. You stop, walk, and talk. Stop what it is you're doing, walk away to put some distance between you and the other person, give yourself time to cool off, and find someone you can talk to and ask for their assistance and guidance in how to handle this situation more constructively. Very simple technique, but very effective when applied.
It sounds effective to me. Let's pause for a moment for a public service message. Please stay with us.
Hi, I'm Robert Reed, assistant coach of the Washington Bullets. You know, kids, you have to remember, real guns aren't toys. Take Eddie Eagle's advice.
Stop! Don't touch! Leave the area! Tell an adult! Yes!
Remember, if you find a gun, stop! Don't touch! Leave the area! Tell an adult. The Eddie Eagle Child Safety Program. Get it in your school from the National Rifle Association.
We're back with children's author Janet Pfeiffer. Before we continue our conversation, Jan, would you like to say hi to your mom?
Oh, sure. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad, too.
Jan's mom had picked up one of our Oaklander flyers and had forwarded to Janet, and she contacted the show there, and we just thought it would be nice for her to say hi to her mom and dad. The anger workshops that you try to convey to people and parents, what do they try to convey to the parents and children that attend?
Well, I like to give people a good understanding of what anger is. Most people really don't understand anger at all. They know that it's an emotion, but they really are not aware of what it is. Anger is a sign, and it's a sign that something is wrong. It's the only way that we have to know that either there's danger or that there's an injustice that's occurring. Once we get the message that there's something that we need to address, we don't need to feel the anger anymore.
It's also a reactive emotion.
Yes.
And it's also said that if you act on your emotions, most of the time you're going to make a mistake.
Right, right.
Wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you feel that the public schools have a role in teaching the students some of these skills in emotional management, or is it mainly a parental responsibility?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, and even beyond the schools and the parents. I think our primary educators are our parents. However, most parents enter into parenthood with no good parenting skills, and many parents are basically absentee, either through divorce or the workforce or whatever. So it does become a primary responsibility of the schools to teach children how to manage their anger.
And you have spoken at teacher conventions and teacher workshops. And
Yes.
are they kind of picking up on it? Are they moving forward in this direction to where, because obviously if they're not getting some of it from the parents, and the parents also learn from your books.
Oh yes, they do. They love,
Reading
the
to the
adults love
children's.
my books, yeah.
So are we getting through to that to the learning process? Because it's something that must be learned and rehearsed.
Right. Well, I do a lot of work throughout New Jersey. I'm in a lot of schools from northern New Jersey all the way to South Jersey. And I do a lot of training sessions for teachers. I also work at all different grade levels. I do get some feedback that the techniques that I teach are definitely effective. It's really important, though, that the techniques are reinforced on a regular basis, because like anything else, when you're trying to establish a new type of behavior, it's very easy to slip back into your old pattern of behavior. So it's important to have an understanding of what anger is, but also know how to manage it constructively.
What other subjects do you like to write about in your books?
Well, I have 2 books that are being published right now. They should be out the end of this year. One of them, again, they're children's stories. They're written so that children will enjoy reading them, but they have very powerful underlying messages that adults can relate to. So I have one coming out the end of this year called The Angel and the Gift, which is basically a story about relationships. Although children will read it, it's a story about a man with a garden of flowers. But it's actually about relationships and how we search for a relationship that we love, and then we don't nurture it and cherish it. We kind of abuse it or neglect it, and it dies. And then we go out and search for it all over again. And many of us get into that pattern that we just keep repeating over and over again throughout our adult lives. And the other book is The Orchids of Gateway Lane, which deals, the theme again is anger, but it deals more with gangs and violence, and how one child learns to apply the principle that the only way to defeat your enemy is to make him your friend. And so this child tries to apply that principle to this gang at school that has been creating a problem, and the technique is very effective. And then throughout the story, the child grows and applies that same principle to a rioting community, and then eventually to establishing world peace. And so those 2 books will be out the end of this year. That one is called The Orchids of Gateway Lane. And then I just finished my 4th book, which is a story which helps children to understand death, particularly the death of a parent.
Sure.
Yeah, and how to deal with that loss.
Or in this day and age with death of a sibling.
Oh, sure, you can apply it to death for any important person in your life.
What does that deal with? Was it deal with loss, just dealing with the pain that the child would have?
Well, it kind of illustrates what happens when in this case it's a parent, when a parent leaves, and the fact that many times the children don't understand, well, what happened to daddy or mommy? They were here and now we don't see them anymore. Where did they go? And so it's done in a parable form. It's a story which starts out with an adult who, actually it's a father whose wife is dying, and how he needs to explain this to his children, and he relates it back to an experience he had as a child. But it not only explains death to children, but it talks a lot about all the different emotions that you go through, and then how you can handle that, how you can search for help from others that have had similar experiences, how you can focus on, again, the good things that you have left in life, the things that you have to be thankful for. In this case, the child still had his siblings and his mother there, so he still had a lot that he could be thankful for.
What are the challenges do you feel that are awaiting our children born in, say, the late 1980s, the early 1990s, the 5 and 6-year-olds? Won't we all benefit from a more tolerant and understanding society?
Yes and no. I think society needs to be very tolerant and understanding. But what I see happening is that we are more accepting of people's behaviors, but we're not, I don't want to say forcing them to be responsible for their actions, but I think that we're not challenging people to be accountable for what they do. So I think that that's something that I think children face a problem in that area, because unless if they are made to be accountable, to be held accountable for the things that they do, they're going to kind of grow up with this attitude that, well, oh, sure, I could do this because somebody's going to say, oh, well, poor thing, they come from a broken home, or they have an alcoholic parent, or whatever, so we'll make excuses for them. I think that's going to be one of the greatest challenges that our children have to face today.
Have you met some of your children who have read the books, who have grown up to maybe 9 or 10 now, and come back and meet you and go, how wonderful it was, the experience that they had with reading the book? Have you had that experience?
Well, the book has only been out 2 years,
Okay.
so not too many of the children who read it 2 years ago have grown up. But I have actually had people call me to tell me that the book has had a tremendous impact on their lives. I have one little boy who lives in Franklin Lakes that told me this is his favorite book that he has ever read. He
Oh, that's
absolutely loves it.
wonderful.
And he really believes in this, that he says, I always try to find the good things in everything bad that happens.
That's the way we have to go.
Yeah.
Well, Janet, thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights on improving the way that we interact with one another. And good luck to you in your future workshops in anger management. And we will return after this message.
25 years ago, America made a commitment to a healthier environment. And today, our air is cleaner, our drinking water safer, our rivers and streams less polluted. But now, the polluters are back, teamed up with other special interests and a new majority in Congress to weaken our environmental protection laws. Don't let them turn back the clock. Call 1-800-334-2100 to find out how you can help.
Spring, isn't it lovely? Yes, indeed. I just love this time of year. The flowers, the playground, and baseball. Well, I wish I could play baseball.
Hey, 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 kid with the funny hat, you want to play?
Who, me? Well, sure, that would be swell.
Go out in the outfield and I'll hit you some flies.
Oh, boy, this is so neat. I'm really going to play with the other kids. I'll probably make a running catch and nail the runner trying to score from third.
Let's see if you can hit my fastball. Go ahead, Toby, throw me the heat. Here it comes.
All right, I got it. No problem. Right here in the old bread basket. Piece of cake.
Go, Frosty, go, Frosty, go! Go, Frosty, go, Frosty, go! That Frosty gives me the chills.
Here it comes. This is it. The big moment. Oh!
Oh, no! Oh, no, he's out cold. Are you okay, Frosty?
Oh. Maybe I'd better stick to snowballs instead.
Don't worry, Frosty. Let's get a nice cold snow cone instead.
That Frosty, he's one cool customer.
Gee, that was fun. I really like this time of year. Happy day.
Hi, my name is Bob Holderith. I'm the volunteer chairperson for the American Cancer Society George Washington Bridge Challenge. On Sunday, June 9th of this year, we're having a party, and you are invited. It's not your regular kind of party. Yeah, we'll have food, we'll have drinks, but what we're doing is we're getting together to fight cancer. So if you want to walk, or ride your bike, or run, Come meet us down near the George Washington Bridge on Sunday morning. We're going to have a great time there. Since 1985, we've raised over $1 million to fight cancer in the Bergen County area, and we have a great time doing it. All you need to do is find 10 friends who want to give you $10 to help us fight this dreaded disease. Everybody knows somebody who's been touched by cancer, and now here's your chance to help, and it's very easy for you to do that. So come join the Market Basket and NatWest Bank and ShopRite Supermarkets and Ski Barn and help us fight this disease.
My grandfather said this mummy is worth millions.
May I see the mummy right now? May I see the mummy right now?
Okay, let's give it a try. Ready or not?
Okay, meet at the graveyard gate at midnight tonight. Charlie, don't be late.
No!
Welcome to our Internet Surf segment.
Cowabunga, dude!
That's right. I'm your host, Greg Schuss, for a trip through cyberspace. So put on your wetsuits, grab your surfboards, and let's catch a wave on the information superhighway. Let me first explain what we're going to be looking at today. The Internet is made up of many computers and networks. Think of it like the phone system. You choose a website you want to visit, just like dialing a phone number. Your computer sends out a message to open a connection to that site, and just like having the phone ring, a message is returned saying, okay, we can talk to one another, and the data comes across to your screen showing the information, just like having someone talking on the other end of the phone line. How does this happen, and what computer equipment and software is needed for this brave new world? Well, first we need a personal computer. For this example, we're using a Windows PC. I would recommend at least a 486 processor with 8 megabytes of memory. A large enough disk drive to hold all your favorite files, at least 350 megabytes, and a high-speed modem. 14.4 is okay, but 28.8 BPS is even better, especially if you're going to be surfing the web. Windows 3.1 or Windows 95 is needed as well as a color monitor capable of displaying 256 colors or better. Most new Super VGA screens can display over 1 million colors. If you have an Apple computer, you probably already have most of this equipment. But on this show, we'll stick with Intel-based machines running Windows. Now what about software? Okay, here's the real scoop. To access the internet, you could use a service like America Online, Prodigy, or CompuServe, who all provide a gateway to the internet. But the service is very slow and limited. If you're like most serious web surfers, you need direct access. Just like having an account with your local phone company, you need an account with a local internet service provider. This will give you direct access to the internet without paying for hourly charges with some online service. Remember, you want to dial a local phone number so you won't incur toll charges. Now, most providers will give you the software you need to get electronic mail, access to news groups, and most important, the World Wide Web. You can visit your local computer store and buy a web browser like Netscape Navigator, or if you're lucky enough to be running Windows 95, you can also get the Microsoft Internet Explorer. Okay, now all your software is loaded, your account is established with your service provider, and you're ready to surf the web. Let's take a look at how this works. After we dial up our provider to establish a connection, which may take a minute or two while the computer sends the proper identification and password to the provider, this will provide the connection to the internet so we can begin to surf the net. Next, our Netscape browser takes us to our home or default website. As you can see, our home site takes us to the SHUS Systems page. From here we can search for topics of interest on the net. Once we're on the web, how do we find what we're looking for? Well, the easiest way is to use the popular search tools. One of the search tools that we like is Alta Vista. We select the Alta Vista site from our bookmarks, which is our list of favorite sites, and then we type in our selection. There are many popular search tools on the web like Yahoo, Webcrawler, and Lycos. Another way to get to a website is to type in the Uniform Resource Locator or web address located here on the browser. The address for Webcrawler, for instance, is http://www.webcrawler.com. Now, let's enter our selection. Let's look for the Oaklander and see what comes back. Well, look at that. Now all we have to do is select the returned selection and we're automatically taken to the website. This is called a link, and many pages have links to other web pages. For instance, the Oaklander page has a link to the Breedles and the Oakland, New Jersey page. Here's the Breedles with Dennis Steichen of the Smithereens, and even Uncle Willie on the Oaklander porch. Hi, Uncle Willie. Let's try the Breedles page and see what we get. One of the problems with the web is the response time. If you're trying to connect to a popular site like the Breedles, you may have to wait a few minutes for all the information. Pictures and sound clips take a while to load. Remember, the faster your connection, the better, so try to at least use a 28.8 BPS modem. Now, some local phone companies are offering ISDN, which is 4 to 5 times faster, but also much more expensive. Even the cable TV companies like TCI are getting into internet access service, and soon you will be able to buy a cable modem for extremely fast access. There's our own Chris Breitfeld of the Breedles, and we can even download a few Breedles songs if we wanted to. Let's go back to the Oaklander page by pressing the back button now. Let's try the Oakland, New Jersey site and see where it takes us. This is a site that was put up by Daniel Puertas, who grew up in Oakland and decided to share with the world the natural beauty of our town. He even put up a photo album where we can see pictures of Oakland. Do you think Daniel will add pictures of the destruction of Riverbend? Somehow I don't think so. Thanks, Daniel, for sharing your pictures and the love of Oakland. We've all heard about electronic commerce on the internet. Here's an example of a new inline skating company. Mom's Aggressive Inline. They offer skate kits, clothing, and yes, even Beatles music. Should you buy products through the internet with your credit card? The answer is probably not. The internet is in the process of establishing secure transactions, but it is still the playground for hackers. These are computer users who would like nothing better than to get their hands on your credit card information. How does Mom's Inline get around this? They suggest you print out the order form and fax in your order. This definitely makes more sense. Let's go back to Alta Vista again and look for the Sierra Club. I bet they have a website we could visit. If we type in Sierra Club New Jersey and hit submit, and let's see what comes back. Here we go. Let's try this link and see what we get. If you have a favorite site you'd like us to visit, just drop us a line. You can reach us on the Oaklander at www.interactive.net/is-oktv.html. Well, thank you for joining us on Surfin' Safari, and next time we'll look at some of the new technologies that are changing the web, like Real Audio, Shockwave, and Sun Microsystems Java. I'm your host, Greg Schuss, and we'll catch you on the next wave of Surfin' Safari.
Hi, my name is Nick Cressy. I've been an Oakland resident for over 20 years. Some of you may remember me as the soccer commissioner for recreational soccer. Currently, I'm the captain of the Oakland Pistol Team. Since the Crime Bill of 1994, many people have purchased firearms for their own protection and safety. It occurred to us on the Pistol Team that maybe some of those people purchasing those firearms don't know how to use them properly. We on the Oakland Pistol Team are ready, willing, and able to offer you training with certified instructors on the proper use of firearms. And if you decide that you actually enjoy using those firearms, we have a league that you can join us in, and we're always looking for new members in the Oakland Pistol Team. Thank you.